Was the British Empire a good thing or a bad thing? And did it herald the triumph of European civilization or the defeat of European civilization? And will Europe become top dog by 2030, or will it suffer oblivion or in obscurity? Well, let's tackle the issue of the British Empire. And for speed, I shall read. The British Empire spawned the USA, Canada and Australia, so for me those were good things. But overall it was a failure. It did not complete the task of Europeanising Africa because of malaria and Central and South Eastern Africa's backwardness. This led to the problems that we see in South Africa today because of the failure of the British and the Boers to prevent the Zulu and Xhosa moving into South Africa. Also, the British Empire conquered China but did not colonise it fully, as the Americans colonised the American Indians, and equally you could say that for India. It failed in that the British Empire's task was to become a federal nation state. If you read the Boer War, the Milner Group was trying to achieve a federalised empire, just like America, but with a limited monarchy and a democracy with an English majority population throughout the entire empire under the law. But instead, we increased the native population and then imported them to our own homeland. So for me, the British Empire was a disaster in all. Those are my own comments to My Noon, 1999. The British Empire also led to World War I and World War II indirectly, and thus the search for oil, which led to the emergency of crime families such as the Bin Ladens and Saudis, because Churchill and Roosevelt recognised the Saudi and Bin Laden crime families as the supreme power in the Saudi Peninsula. It wasn't called the Saudi Peninsula, it was called the Arabian Peninsula. And those two families were responsible for 9/11. Why did the British Empire indirectly cause World War I? World War I was the cause of World War II by the fact that the vengeful Allied powers put harsh demands on Germany economically, which would have allowed Adolf Hitler to rise to power more easily than he would have if they'd been concessional. And after World War II, we learned our lesson from this, and we made partners and an alliance, a strong alliance between Britain and a democratic Germany. World War I was caused by the various powers, including the British Empire, making a matrix of different alliances between each other based on the doctrine of mutually assured destruction, or MAD. This thus formed the same doctrine which was used with nuclear weapons during the Cold War. This was supposed to ensure war did not occur. Unfortunately, it was bollocks. Just like the Cold War, in which over 20 million people died, incidentally. Serbia sparked World War I off by assassinating Archduke Ferdinand, and because Russia and France were allied to Serbia against Austria and Germany, who they thus invaded, Russia and France thus invaded Germany and Austria during the World War I, which is not always said, when they were allied to Serbia. But the Milner Group, the British Empire's most influential group during in the establishment during the 19th century and the early 20th century. You should read a book called Tragedy and Hope by Carol Quigley. They created those matrix of alliances that set the situation in place for some event to spark the war, World War I. World War I could be said to be the beginning of the British Empire, the end of the British Empire, and the beginning of the end of the British Empire. The British Empire also failed to prevent Palestine being eradicated by Israel as a pure Jewish state, rather than what the British wanted was Palestine as a mixed Jewish, Arab and Mediterranean race country. On the other hand, the British Empire left the world with international law, a majority English-speaking world order, a scientific and cultural Anglo and Celtic Europeanisation of the global culture and economy. That's the Celtic and Nordic people's contribution to the global culture and the global economy now. Empires by their nature are an overexertion and a depreciation in industrial power, because more power is put into military dominance over other peoples, and that's why I'm an anti-imperialist. And they normally collapse, so they are wrong. They are a wrong strategic move. That was my response to Myneen's comments. As I said many times before, the European Union should expand into the Middle East, Turkey, the periphery of the Middle East, that is Turkey, Iran and Azerbaijan. Why do I say this? Why is this not a mistake along the same role as the empire? Because those are Indo-European countries, and if they can be slowly more secularized away from Islam, they can be as they once were, an integral part of the Roman world. They can be once again an integral part of the European world. And also, Russia, although it has an Asian mentality at the moment, is partially a European country. I would not be averse to Russia joining the European Union eventually, but we are already so close to Moscow in terms of the borders of the European sphere of influence that you can see that the European Union is almost near Moscow. Right, now, the North African Union and the Mediterranean Union, will these help make a periphery around Europe that will create a larger block of influence than, say, Europe's ally, the United States, which dominated throughout the Cold War, and you could say was an empire, in a non-territorial empire, but an empire because of its hyperpower status as having the world's reserve currency, which the euro could have in the future, and its military complete dominance in the 20th century. It defeated Nazi Germany, Japan and the Soviet Union. Those are three bad things that it defeated. But what does this mean for European survival? And why do I say that the British Empire's importation of immigrants from abroad was a strategic disaster? Because although getting rid of the empire was a decision between democracy or empire, and there is no other choice between those two. You can have an empire and you can have a dictatorship, a military dictatorship, which you could argue Churchill was during World War II, but for the obvious reasons of trying to defeat Nazi Germany and Adolf Hitler. Or you can have a democracy, but with democracy comes some easing of the norms of culture. Now, the norms of culture, by importing foreign cultures and foreign peoples into our island, created a schism. And this is a schism that has not actually been solved. Now, there must be some racial mixing. It's not a racialist point to say that immigration was a major factor in the 20th century. It certainly is. It's certainly a major factor in the 21st century. But what we must say is that Europeans have a right to survive. European culture has a right to survive. As I've said in my vid, BNP members make a choice between European survival or Thatcherism. Thatcherism was a major digression in our culture because it unleashed some very evil forces, but you can check out that vid to see what I mean. And I was trying to talk down BNP members from their racialist views there. But I digress again. The European survival is at stake, and a European Union that supports European culture of natural rights, of economic rights, is a much better bet than the British Empire. Although the British Empire can arguably have said to have spawned the European Union. Why is this? Because the European Union will be a mostly English-speaking entity, and it will be a mostly British-led and German-led entity Thank you for listening.